Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. And it's a very, very late edition of Hot Takes, or a very early one, if you want to look at it the other way. It's currently 4 minutes past 2 in the morning. The results were announced about 15 minutes ago. It went kind of as expected. We were expecting a Labour victory. And boy, did Labour get a victory there. By a long, long way. Michael Shanks, the Labour candidate, he scored 17,845 votes. And the only person who even came close was Katie Loudon for SNP, who only got 8,399. Everyone else lost their deposit. They were the only two. It was literally a two-horse race. But only one horse was ever going to win it, and win it big. It was a massive swing. When you look that Labour got nearly 60% of all the votes. I mean, if this was replicated across the whole of Scotland in the general election, which of course it won't be, but if it were, it would wipe out an awful lot. I mean, like the vast majority of SNP seats. It's just an immense amount. Now, of course, we know it's not going to happen in a general election. It was very sort of specific to this one location, this one constituency, given the history of it. There's also the fact that there was an awful lot of tactical voting in the the pre-match, as it were. They have all the talking heads were there, and even Jackie Bailey was admitting that there were people coming from the Tories and voting for Labour simply because they'd had enough of the SNP, and they wanted to make sure that the message was sent and that the SNP had no chance of getting in. She did also say that there were people from the SNP voting Labour, and you can tell that that's definitely the case, because the SNP's share of the vote fell 16%, and Labour's went up 24%. That's a 20% swing to Labour. Now, a 10% swing to Labour would give them like almost half the seats at a general election. A 20% seat would be stunning. It would be absolutely catastrophic for the SNP. I don't really know where they're going to go. Now, we kind of knew that they were going to win. Earlier in the evening, as you're watching them all come in and you had Katie Loudon coming in. Of course, she's doing the political smiles, but she was smiling in the mouth. But she wasn't smiling in the eyes. It was that fixed rictus of death, as she knew that her race was run. She was not going to become an MP. She knew. She just knew. And you could see it in her eyes. She had that look, that dead-eye look of someone who knows that they're done, like that. And then about 20 minutes later, Michael Shanks walks in, and he's all grins, and he's smiling in the eyes. And they're all grinning like Cheshire Cats, because they knew he'd win. What they didn't know, what they weren't expecting, of course, was the massive size of the win. It was huge. And indeed, Professor John Curtis, said that it's the first time Labour had won a by-election victory in Scotland since 1964. That is a stunning piece of information. I need to go back and watch it and make sure that that's actually what he said. I can't believe that that's true. Surely not. But if it is, it's like amazing. Or maybe it's the first time in that constituency. I can't believe that either. Even so, it's ancient history. Of course, it doesn't apply today. Everything is different. But there we go. So that's the result. If you want the numbers, it was 58% of the vote was Labour, and how many did she get? 28% for the SNP. No one else, as I say, got managed to save their deposit. Tories came third. Of the parties, the Green came last. But I would like a big shout out to Niall Fraser. He's the one, if you remember, went to wherever they were, Dundee, I think it was, one of the conventions. He's the one who shouted out to Humza Yousaf and said, Humza, you said if anyone is bigoted towards you, you've got to tell them to fuck off. And so fuck off. And that's what he said. Of course, that was Niall. Well done, Niall. Well done. And of all the independents and the singletons and all that, he got the best result. So, yeah, he knew he wasn't going to win, but he stood up there and people respected him for it. And we will, tip hat for Niall. So well done to him. Well done to them all. Just as an aside on a completely different note, it does now mean, and rather sadly somewhat perhaps, that we'll never see or hear from Katie Loudon again. I say sad, I mean, it's not sad at all. But she will disappear back into local politics, having failed. And, it's there. Now, of course, we're going to be going through this whole thing again in perhaps 6-7 months. Who knows when the general election will come. But it'll be soon, of course. And we'll be going through this again, but on a much grander scale. But I think that we can quite clearly see the direction of travel. I think the momentum is there for Labour. I think if Labour can get half that, if Labour can get half that swing from 20%, even if they can maintain a 10% swing, then the SNP will be devastated in Scotland. Especially as, of course, there's going to be some areas where the Conservatives are if you look at all the seats that are like only sort of a 2% swing is needed, they're all Tory to SNP. Virtually nowhere is safe for the SNP now, or very few places, because there's all these places where where they only need a 2% swing to lose, and then all those places that only need a 2% swing, it's the Tories, and the Tories could probably do it. Weirdly. And where is, because the Tory, and they're all up there because the Tories are saying, oh look, keep the oil industry and that's going to be a big problem for the SNP. But where you're going to need anything up to the 10% mark to win, it's all Labour. And if Labour are getting a 20% in a place like that, surely they can maintain 10% across the whole of Scotland. It's going to be a very bad time. They've got their convention next week, the conference up in Aberdeen. Humza Yousaf has got to walk on there, having not just lost this election, but lost this election by an almost record amount. A massive, horrendous 20% swing. I don't think that's survivable, and I hope to God it isn't. Anyway, that'll do. I hope this has been useful for you. We'll call it there. Thank you very much for watching. We'll have a lot more tomorrow, but that's it. I'm never going to mention Katie Loudon again. I promise you, this is it. It's done, and that's it. And it has been an absolute marathon, and we've done so many stories on Rutherglen. And you've stuck with us all the way through, from the very first time it seemed that Margaret Ferrier was likely to be in trouble, all the way through to her getting in trouble, to the recall petition, to the announcement of the election, and all the way up until tonight, this morning as it is now. So thank you very much for your support on all of that, and we can now finally say that we will never talk about Rutherglen again. Or Katie Loudon. Until next time, stay well, look after yourself, and for heaven's sake, go to bed if you're watching me now. And if you're watching me in the morning, thank you. Bye.